Hello, everybody. How y'all doing? Sorry I missed the Wednesday episode yesterday. I'll make up for it by doing an episode today on Thursday. So today's episode, we're going to be doing like a recap of everything we've read so far, which is most of the book or Law of Moses. We have not read Deuteronomy yet. We'll get into Deuteronomy, but Deuteronomy repeats a lot of the stories we've read. So I just thought I'd do a recap and then go into Deuteronomy, just reading new stuff that we haven't read, because I really don't want to participate in the repetition, because that was one of the tricks. Like, they kept repeating it over and over again. You had to keep reading it over and over again. I don't really want to do that, read a bunch of stuff we've already read. It's pointless and a waste time. I will do a recap, though, of everything that we've read thus far, though, because I think it's important now that we've read like most of the laws of Moses. Or actually, technically, we didn't read the laws because I didn't find that important either. I was just more focused on the theology of it, the way that Yahweh was acting, the way he was treating his chosen people. That's really what I was more worried and focused on, because I think that's the part that we get brainwashed about the most. Even though it's in black and white, on paper, we get brainwashed about it just the absolute most. So I wanted to read it again, all of it, put it into perspective from like the lens I have now versus the lens when I was a loyal follower. When I was a loyal follower, I could make excuses like the best of them. You know what I mean? I made excuses all day for the weird and evil stuff that was going on in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament. So I made excuses all day. I don't know, something happened about a year ago, that I just read it from a different lens. I think Elena Danan, mostly for that, and Danny Henderson, a video they did together really opened my eyes. If I can remember, I will link it below, where they go to the British Museum and talk about like the real history of the planet and what actually happened with the flood and all that. That really opened my eyes. And then I just opened my Bible, began in Genesis, when Adam and Eve in the garden, after Eve had disobeyed, even though if you really look at it, Yahweh lied to her. The snake told her the truth. Yeah, she got punished for it and condemned man for all eternity or whatever. However, the fact is still the fact. One lied, one told the truth. The snake told the truth. Maybe he didn't mention how bad she'd get punished for it, but he did tell her the truth. That no, if you eat from the fruit, you will have wisdom. And what happened right after she took a bite? Her and Adam both ate from the fruit. They both realized they were naked suddenly. Suddenly they weren't these primitive animals anymore running around naked. They had, a sense of self or shame or all of the things, that humans have now. Something else I missed when I first read, Adam and Eve's story. What was the first thing Yahweh asked them when he found them in the garden, hiding because they were naked? What was the first thing he asked them? Who told you were naked? As in, for him, it's normal to wear clothes, and he wanted them to keep believing that they were fine running around willy-nilly naked. He wants to know now, wait a minute, who told you that you were naked? How do you guys know that you're naked? Almost implying that he's not naked. You know what I mean? Like, if you read the different translation and the context of it, it's the same in every one. It's like, who told you this? How did you learn this? Not, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you're sinners now. Or no, it's almost like something he knew that he didn't want them to know. You know what I mean? But, so, that was a big thing for me when I read that. And also, the flood probably. And, when you read the story about the flood and all, or if you look in like apocryphal books like Enoch and stuff, the flood was sent basically because the angels and Yahweh and stuff, not necessarily were they that upset that the people were sinning and disobeying. They were more upset that this other group of watchers were teaching humans like what to do, helping them build cities and all these different things, and that they obviously weren't ready for us to learn yet, or maybe they never wanted us to learn. So they kill everything. Now, growing up, I don't know, I guess I found ways to excuse that in my head, but now it's like, how do you justify that? How do you justify killing every living thing on earth because of something humans were doing? How do you justify that? And then you're going to sit there and say humans are ruining the earth, but you actually literally did ruin the earth. You did. Whoever this group is, they ruined everything. And no, it wasn't just some lush patch of green when the ark descended upon the mountain. There was nothing. There had to have been nothing but death, mud, debris, just a big slosh of death. That's what Noah and his family had to rebuild on. No doubt they were absolutely traumatized to the point where it looked like Noah became an alcoholic, curses one of his sons for I don't know, because he looked at him naked. Who knows? I think because Noah was embarrassed or whatever, and Yahweh just used that as an excuse to start terrorizing a family. I don't know. I could be wrong. But it's also incredibly evil and manipulative. It all really is. So then what happens? Civilization picks back up. People repopulate. Noah's family repopulates, and I'm sure there's others. The earth is repopulating, you know what I mean? And suddenly this certain group in the Middle East began building a tower together. Because, they probably were getting a little upset seeing all these ETs coming and going, taking their resources, going, never, bringing nothing for them. So they decided, you know what, we're gonna do our own thing. We're gonna build a tower of our own. What the nature of this tower was, I'm not sure. But the ETs, or whoever this group was, maybe they weren't ETs, whoever this group was, saw this taking place and were like, oh my God, if they actually succeed in this, we're effed. Like, we are absolutely effed. And there's nothing that these people cannot do. We can't have this. We can't allow this. Sound familiar? So that basically they infiltrate, divide, say they change their language, which basically means that they divided them from the inside. And then, they had to start from square one. They couldn't do it by themselves. They had, you know what I mean? I'm not really 100% positive, but I would assume these would be people of Middle Eastern descent that they were terrorizing, just like similar to how they're being terrorized today. But anyways, we don't need to go into that. That's a long, deep discussion for another time. We'll get there. But anyways, the point is, this is when the big divisions began. And you know what I mean? People, go off on their own lands and whatnot. And, I could only assume Mesopotamia, or Sumer, or whatever you want to call it, was among these different civilizations. So, the Sumerians, they are very gifted, or inventive, intuitive even. They, invent the wheel. They come up with the writing system. So many firsts. I can't even begin to count them all. Government, trade, all these things. They were on it. And this is where Abraham comes from. He comes from Mesopotamia. And specifically the city of Ur, which was a Mesopotamian city in its heyday. That's where Abraham came from. So you have this individual. I'm not even going to begin to speculate on if it's an ET or just a very, very intelligent group of humans. But whoever they are, they approach Abraham at some point. Whether, I don't know if they entice him to leave his city or if they coerce him to, if they force him to, I don't know. But for whatever reason, he decides to take him and his family and they leave. They leave Sumer. And I don't know if they're going anywhere specifically. I know also, I guess maybe it could have been famine possibly, but I don't know. It makes it sound like it's for a different reason. Like as if, I don't have my Bible on me right now. I'm just trying to recap off the top of my head. Someone correct me if I'm getting this totally wrong. But I'm pretty sure it's because Yahweh told him that he would make him his own nation. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. But anyways, it could have been famine. So him and Sarah and his whole family, they leave. And at some point in their travels, they have to go to Egypt. And Abraham, Sarah must have been like a knockout in her day. I'm telling you what, her ability to attract kings of other nations is uncanny. It is uncanny. Because this happens twice. Not just some ordinary rich guy in one of these, in Egypt or the Philistines. No, it's always the king. Notices Sarah conveniently. And Abraham's like, oh, she's my sister. She's my sister. Please don't kill me. You're welcome to pay me to sleep with her. Like, essentially is what happens. So he hands off Sarah to these kings. Not just an Egyptian pharaoh, but also a king in the Philistines. He does this twice. I mean, let that really sink in. Think about that. He's willing to let other men sleep with her. And even in ancient times, this is a bit appalling. Even back then, this was appalling. Even though women were property and all that. The fact that he said that this was his sister, took payment, and let other men sleep with her. In fact, it was so appalling that Abimelech, who was the king of the Philistines, when this happened, was like so appalled by this. He's like, how could you do this to your wife? Like, how could you do this, Abraham? And Abraham was like, well, you probably would have killed me. And, I figured, you would have killed me and slept with her anyway. Like, all these excuses. And, even Abimelech approached Sarah and said, I'm giving your brother, quote, because she was his half-sister, even though she was also his wife. He said, I'm giving this to your brother, so that way your honor is protected. I don't know how that protected her honor at all. But anywho, but he was appalled by it. He didn't like it. He didn't like it. Probably also because him and his family were being like poisoned essentially by Yahweh for sleeping with Sarah, even though it was Abraham's idea. I don't know. That whole story is weird. And if it doesn't feel right, it's because it's not right. It's because it's not right. Like, even in ancient times, that was unacceptable. Like, men didn't just... I mean, I don't know. Let me ask you this. Hebrews and Israelis, the ones that are really well attuned to the scripture in times, in ancient times, in antiquity, was that normal for men to just hand their wives off and, like, take payment everywhere they went and say that that was their sister? That feels wrong to me. And it really felt wrong to one of them back then. So I don't think I'm wrong. I could be, but I don't think so. But anyways, let's move on from Abraham for a moment and get to the real star of the story. Not Isaac, his son, but his grandson, Jacob. Now, for whatever reason, yes, Abraham specifically was chosen. But for whatever reason, Yahweh wanted not the next generation, but the third generation after that So when Jacob comes along, that was the one. Okay, you're it. You're the one who is going to give birth, or not give birth, but, procreate this nation that I want. This nation of essential mind-controlled slaves. I'm picking you. And he didn't pick them for any other reason than, like, they probably picked Abraham to begin with, because maybe Abraham was more vulnerable to greed or things like that. I don't know. To seeing things like that, the ETs, I'm sure, or the humans, I'm sure whoever they were pretty smart and evolved, and I'm sure they were impressive. So they choose Abraham, and the reason they wanted to do it, not because Abraham was more or less, he wasn't any more special than any of the other Mesopotamians, I don't think. I could be wrong. I just think whoever this group is, Yahweh, wanted to start from scratch, pull this person and lie to this person, take them away from the more civilized culture, the cultures who were doing things, going somewhere, building things, creating things, pull them away from it and let them, procreate and control this population, because this is a smart population of people. I'm sure it was threatening to this group, whoever they are. I'm sure it was threatening. So they're like, no, we can't have this. We got to take some of them, train them, their offspring, to come back and kill them all. I dare you to tell me that that's not exactly what happened. I dare you all, any of you. That is exactly what happened. Abraham has Isaac, even though he almost kills Isaac. Another story. That, he is like, Yahweh's like, I want you to kill your son. I want to test your loyalty. See, how far are you willing to go to lick the dirt between my toes? And then Abraham takes his own son, his only son. No, sorry. Wrong. I'm wrong. He did have another son. He had Ishmael. His favorite son, though, Isaac. He was going to take his favorite son up on the mountain. We all know the story. The mountain that they're all so obsessed about today. Take him up on the mountain, slaughter him for Yahweh. But then Yahweh comes the 9th or the 11th hour, is like, I'm just kidding. No, please don't kill him. We need him. You don't need to kill him. That is disgusting. That is sick. And if he truly was God, he would know already if Abraham was loyal. This is an intelligent, evolved being playing with someone they do not respect or love. Anywho, let's move on. Jacob, the real prize, the one he specifically chose, separated him from his own family. Now, that's a whole other story. He stole his brother's birthright and everything. His brother wanted to kill him. At least that's what the story is. I'm not really sure if I believe that or how much sense that completely makes to me, but that's the story we've been given. Either way, the end result was the same. Jacob was separated from his family to raise his children separate. And Jacob had 12. And these were the 12 tribes of Israel. Their descendants. He had 12. Wait, no. Was it 14? No, I know it was 12. It was 12 because there was 2 from Rachel and 10 from Leah. But yeah, anyway, so then that all happens. And thanks to Joseph's brothers, they all end up in Egypt at some point, and then their descendants end up becoming slaves in Egypt. At least that's what we've been told. It seems though, it looks more and more like that this, even though they were slaves in Egypt, they were still fed and given housing. And it's, I'm not saying slavery was good, but obviously it's not. I'm just saying that compared to what happened to them when they left Egypt, I think Egypt would have been the lesser evil. That's just my opinion. Because if you thought they were really enslaved in Egypt, oh my God, that was nothing compared to being enslaved in a desert, watching everyone keep dying around you, whether from dehydration or because Yahweh was just in a bad mood one day, while you're just eating the same thing every day for 40 years. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't want to jump ahead. I can't jump ahead. Back up. Back up. Okay. So that all happens. They're slaves in Egypt. And then along comes Moses. Now, Moses might be the number one fool out of all the fools we've talked about so far. I'm trying to have sympathy with them because it was a different time. I do believe they were victims and manipulated, but they still more or less they messed up big time. That's just my opinion. And it's a shame that we can't totally speculate on why that may be. If they did it for selfish reasons or if they actually thought they were doing their people a favor. It's hard to say because we've been lied to and manipulated. I'd like to think that they truly thought that they were helping their people. I'd like to think that. But I don't know. I can't assume anything anymore about these stories. Okay, Moses. So, he leaves Egypt. He's grows up in royalty, by the way. One of the lucky few of the Israelites who got to grow up in a royal house. But then once he realizes what's going on, everyone he's related to and everything, and accidentally kills an Egyptian guard, he flees. He flees Egypt, understandably. He flees to Midian. And in Midian, he finds a wife, starts a family, has kids, all this. So, and he just starts this whole new life. Then one day while he's tending to, I think he's a shepherd, tending to his flocks or whatnot, whatever he's doing, a bush is burning. And he must approach it and whatnot. He's like, oh my God, what the heck? This burning bush is talking to me. Which is, interesting. And then this burning bush proceeds to tell him that he needs to go back to Egypt. Back where he had murdered someone. Back where his people were still slaves. And if Yahweh actually intended to free them, that would have actually been wonderful, a beautiful thing. But we know he didn't. We know he didn't actually want to free them. But so let's get into that. Moses, though, this is my opinion. I don't believe Moses fully understood. I think he was misled. Yahweh promised him, what did Yahweh promise him, right? He promised him that he would free them, bring them to a land flowing with milk and honey, and, where they would be free to serve Yahweh, but they'd be more or less free. They wouldn't be another human slaves, or, I don't know. I don't think the whole slave part was revealed to him until much later. So, but yeah, nor the sacrifice. I don't think none of this was revealed to Moses at first. Obviously it wasn't, or he would have never chose to do it. But, he actually thinks, he can trust this burning bush because this is not like anything he's ever seen before, and he feels like he can trust it. This is a powerful being. He gives him this magical staff that can turn into a snake and do all sorts of things. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to do it. But wait a minute, I can barely talk. I stutter too much. No one will listen to me. Yahweh assures him, don't worry. Your brother Aaron's going to help you too. So, Moses, I don't know if his wife went with him or not, or if he left them behind. He may have left them behind. Who knows? But he goes to Egypt, right? He goes to Egypt, and then we know what happens. This is when Yahweh's plan starts to become a little bit more clear. Maybe not at first, but somewhere during all these plagues that were hurting so many people, it becomes clear that Yahweh was making Pharaoh say no on purpose. He says this over and over. I'm going to harden his heart on purpose to say no, because I want everyone to see my power, to see how powerful I am. I want to be legendary. You know what? No one will ever forget me after this. But in order for that to happen, Pharaoh can't just go along and let them go. That would be an anticlimactic story. No, he's got to say no, and then I got to show my ass, show him what I'm talking about. So somewhere along the way, though, I think Moses may begin to understand the full implications of what Yahweh's doing, but kind of at this point, it's a little too late, you know what I mean? And another reason I personally believe that the Israelites didn't want to leave Egypt. I think that's another reason. I don't think they wanted to leave Egypt, because we see several times after they do leave Egypt, they try to go back and want to go back, and a lot of them end up dying for wanting to go back to Egypt. Very interesting. So, that's my personal opinion. And then the worst plague of them all, which was the last one, the big one, where Yahweh had killed every newborn or firstborn Was it every newborn or firstborn? I can't remember. But it was a crap ton of dead that Yahweh killed. And only if they took the blood of a lamb, put it on the threshold, they would get spared and all that. We know that. So the Israelites, they got clear for that one. But the rules become a little less clear after this, because Yahweh says every firstborn belongs to me. Every firstborn animal, every firstborn plant, every firstborn human. Every firstborn belongs to me. Now, we are led to believe that the tribe of Levi's tribe, would belong to Yahweh. They'd essentially just be Yahweh's servants, and that would make up for them sacrificing their children. But, we know for a fact that some of them did sacrifice children for Yahweh. We know that for a fact. Now that we read the book of Numbers. See, now that we're in the book of Numbers, and we see, this is like, if we skip over all the other stuff, like, what happens in the desert, them almost dying of dehydration and plague and disease and rotten meat and snake biting venom and being literally swallowed into the earth, like so much death, so much abuse, all this occurs, all this takes place. Then to top it all off, Moses must lead his fighting men to Midian to wipe them out, to do a genocide. Midian, where Moses' family was, his relatives were. I'm sure at this point, because this is like almost 40 years, some later, after all like these Egyptian events and everything took place, at this point, Moses isn't Moses anymore. Like, he's like become what Yahweh shaped him to be, in my opinion. I'd like to think that maybe at the end, he started seeing reason. And maybe that's why Yahweh took him like on the mountain and killed him on Mount Nebu. I'd like to think that. But I don't know. But, I just want to go back to something, though. The reason that Moses would never be able to see the promised land and all that was, remember, when they sent scouts into Jericho, or the land flowing with milk and honey, and some of them came back, they said there were giants there. There were giants there and they were afraid. This pissed Yahweh off. And I think this was the perfect opportunity for Yahweh to be like, no, we're not going there yet. No, we're not going there yet. In fact, all of you are going to be long gone before we ever go there. And it's going to be your descendants that go there. All because you were nervous about the giants in the land. So no. Isn't that convenient? And now they can't go back to Egypt. They're stuck in the desert, depending on Yahweh. Like, he literally established this mentality that, and they did. In the middle of the desert, they did depend on Yahweh for sustenance. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of food in the middle of the desert for all these people. Or water, especially water. So they really depended on Yahweh. And it's not like there was people occupying in all the other places around. Not like they could just go somewhere else just yet, unless Yahweh was willing to help them take the land. So, like, there was no version of this where a whole bunch of people didn't die. There was no version of it. And they were stuck. And they were mind controlled. And once the first generation was all gone, just like we know from Making a Slave, Willie Lynch, that we've read, this is the same program, same mind control program that was being implemented. But anyways, let me get back to what I was talking about a minute ago. Numbers. What do we know now about the child sacrifice? What do we know now? Now that we read the book of Numbers, we know that Yahweh made Moses go back to Midian, all the fighting men, slaughter them all. Every single man, woman, and child. Everyone except for little girls. For female children. For them to keep for themselves. But Yahweh got his portion. He got 32 children from that. From that genocide that they committed. And this was all Yahweh's command. He said, keep those female children for yourselves as long as you give me 32 of them. So, yeah. Yahweh ordered that. Or God, as the church wants to say. What kind of God would do that? I mean, for real. What kind of God would do that? So, even after everything Moses did to help Yahweh exert his control, brought his people all out in the middle of the desert, did all of this, made them endure so much loss, so much grief, so much devastation. And Yahweh, just because, Moses stood up for the Israelites one time. Finally, it took him, 40 years to stand up. It was getting hot and dry, and everyone was thirsty, and there wasn't any water left. And it was getting dangerous. I mean, you're in the middle of the desert. You need water, and there was a lot of people to give water to. And Moses himself finally said, why would you bring them here? And now, keep in mind, this is something the Israelites had been saying this whole time. Finally, Moses is saying it. Why would you bring them all here just to die? You should have just left them in Egypt where they were. And he didn't even care anymore if Yahweh killed him. He didn't care. He was fed up. He was fed up. He was so fed up that when Yahweh said, all right, fine, Aaron, take the staff and go out there and make water pour. No, what happened instead, they didn't follow that rule exactly. Moses took the staff. I don't know if it's because Aaron refused or what, but Moses took the staff and hit a rock twice angrily. Then water started pouring out. Yahweh didn't like that. Yahweh saw that as a defiance. He saw it as a defiance, and he couldn't, and a defiance that was witnessed by the Israelites. So clearly, Moses and Aaron had to be made an example of. So they were murdered. I mean, the Bible makes that clear. They didn't die of natural causes. Yahweh told them that they would die for Aaron to give up his clothes and whatnot, and for Moses to go up the mountain. He told them that they would die, and they did. And in case y'all don't believe me about the female children and what they had, that Yahweh made them endure, here is that verse. Numbers 31:18. But all female children that have not known a man, by lying with him, keep alive for yourselves. That was from the Webster Bible. In case there was any confusion. Which, it kind of makes me think about something, about the stuff that's going on today. Like, a lot of the stuff you see happening today, I don't know if it directly stems from this, but it mirrors it. Like, eerily mirrors it all. And I guess what my wish is, I really hope that someday Israelites and other Semitic people of the Middle East will realize that this happened to them, that this happened to their ancestors, and that they were played against each other because of how smart they were and intuitive they were, and the inventions and strides they were making in humanity. It was just a horrible abuse of them. And maybe they can realize that and get along someday, I hope. But I'm not from the Middle East, so I'm not going to insert myself into their problems. I just think it's a shame that they gave us so much. They gave humanity so much, and I don't like it. I don't like to see what's happening. I just don't like it. And I hope they stop fighting. Who knows? But we can hope. We can hope that's what happens. But I do know that they need to stop following these religions. Not just the Bible or Judaism or Christianity or Catholicism, but Islam too. That's another trap. That was another pivot. That was another pivot to keep control. So I don't know. I just hope people wake up from that and move on from these horribly oppressive religions that have done like no good for humanity. The only bit of good that did come out of any of it was some of the stuff that like love your neighbors, like things like that. But like all good lies, it's got like a whole bunch of truth with a little bit of lie. So that's what I think about that. But we'll get into the New Testament later at another point. In the meantime, I'll see you guys on Sunday.